Welcome, take a seat, and grab a hot drink like my chrysanthemum plus basil tea, where my basil comes right by my window from my basil plant Saeed, my favorite basil plant. So what I want to talk about today is something I'd seen quite a while ago, but it took me so long to wrap my head around. But now I'm finally ready to share it. So this is from a Haskell wiki page called Haskell Blow Your Mind. Haskell is this programming language that's awesome, and my videos are usually written in kind of Haskell style writing. So these 2 lines or 3 lines of code, to be clear, are the formula to generate an infinite list of all primes. So this primes is going to contain every single prime number. It's going to be the infinite list, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and so on. So let's take a look at what it says. It says primes is sieve of this 2 ... thing. So this is the infinite list of positive numbers starting from 2, increasing. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. And you might wonder, well, how could we store an infinite list on a computer? And the trick is something called lazy evaluation, which Haskell does. You don't actually store the list. You store the instructions to produce the list. So then we don't actually compute everything in the list until we need to use it. If I wanted to print the billionth element of an infinite list, only when I say I want to print it, Haskell goes, uh-oh, I've got to actually make the list now. I can't just pretend I've made the list. So then it goes through a bunch of computation, gets to the billionth element, prints it out for me. And it might take a while. Okay, and let's look at how the sieve function is defined. So sieve takes a list, and first it breaks it up into the first element of the list, p, and the rest of the list, x's. So p is a number, while x's is a list of numbers. And that's the correct definition. What this does is it says, okay, my answer is going to be, p is going to be at the head of our answer, and the rest of our answer is going to be sieve z's, where z's is this expression. So what this says is that z's is the n, where n is an element from x's, and n mod p is not 0. So the mod means remainder. So n mod p means the remainder of n when divided by p. And here all you need to know is that n mod p is not equal to 0 means that n is not divisible by p. So z's is everything from x's except the ones which are divisible by p. So sieve produces a list as well. And take a moment to maybe think about or just kind of feel why this may be correct. Why is it that we could so elegantly and shortly make a list of all primes? Okay, now I'm going to formally prove it. And believe it or not, the proof is like 10 lines long, while the actual formula is only arguably 1 line long. You could write all this in the 1 line, and it's quite nice. Okay, so first we're gonna look at what sieve does. And I'm gonna give sieve a precondition and postcondition, which is what I want sieve to do. And then I'm gonna show that sieve actually does it. So this precondition of sieve is that its input, px's, should be the increasing list of all numbers not divisible by any prime less than p. And the postcondition is that sieve px's produces the increasing list of all primes greater or equal to p. So this is saying so long as the precondition holds, the postcondition should hold. And if we look at our original formula, we have sieve of the infinite list starting from 2. Let's see if, in theory, that should produce the right thing. So if we look at the infinite list starting from 2, p is going to be 2, and x's is going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Okay, so if the precondition holds, it must be that this is the increasing list of all numbers not divisible by any prime less than 2. Well, there are no primes less than 2. 2 is the smallest prime. And so this should just be the increasing list of all numbers. But then we also leave out 1, because 1 is not divisible by any prime. So actually this satisfies the precondition such that the sieve of this list should produce the increasing list of all primes greater or equal to 2, which is the increasing list of all primes. Okay, so cool. If we show sieve satisfies these two, then primes should do the correct thing. Okay, so first we need a thing, which is that p is prime, so long as the precondition holds. The reason we want to show that is because the output of sieve is produced step by step. It first produces, missed out my hack. The first the first element of sieve px's should be the first prime that's greater or equal to p. And so this formula, it's claiming that actually p is the first prime that's greater or equal to p. And then it uses recursion magic to say, okay, so this is the first prime greater or equal to p. And then sieve z is going to produce the rest of the primes for us by calling sieve on something else, by producing all the primes greater than or equal to some other number. Or rather, producing all the primes that are strictly greater than p. Okay, so why is p prime? We're going to do a proof by contradiction. Proof by contradiction means we suppose that it's not prime and then show something absurd happens. I remember in this old Euclid Elements book I have, they would keep using this phrase, which is absurd. And then the S would look like an F because it's really old font, fancy font. So then it says like, blah, 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 which is absurd, which is absurd, which is absurd. It's great. Okay, so let's go. So if p were not prime, then p must be divisible by some x between 1 and p. Since if you're not, that's just the definition of a prime number. And x is divisible by some prime less than p, since it is not in the list px's. Let's unpack that. By the precondition, px's is the increasing list of all numbers not divisible by any prime less than p. So since x is smaller than p, x cannot be in this list. So x must be divisible by some prime less than p. Okay, but division is, to use a fancy word, transitive. That means that if p is divisible by x and x is divisible by some prime less than p, p is divisible by some prime less than p. Which means that p cannot be in the list px's, which is ridiculous since p is the head of the list of px's. So p is a prime, and p is also the smallest prime greater or equal to p. Which means that p should be on the front of our answer, the head of our answer. So the first part of our definition for sieve is correct, or our formula for sieve is correct. Okay, so now we need to show sieve z produces the primes greater than p. And I'm gonna show this by showing that z satisfies the precondition of sieve for primes greater than p. Okay, let's remind ourselves of what z is. Z is this list. It's kind of this filtered version of x's. It is px's without the numbers divisible by p. So it is the increasing list of all numbers not divisible by any prime which is less than q, where Q is the prime that comes after P. So, Z's, or rather sieve Z's, must produce all the primes which are greater or equal to Q, which are all the primes which are greater than P. So sieve satisfies its post condition. This means that sieve produces all the primes which are greater or equal to P. Well, this last part of the argument I found quite tricky to come up with. Take a moment, pause and ponder 3 blue 1 brown phrase. What's going on here, and if this argument checks out. Okay, so this means that primes is actually the infinite list of all primes. Proved it rigorously with maths. If you like these things, check out the Haskell Blow Your Mind page that I've linked in the description. And it'll have some really wacky stuff. I'd barely scratched the surface. For example, you could have a one-line recursive formula for the Fibonacci numbers. That is just so elegant. Check that out. That's also a challenge. You might not want to check that out and try to work out yourself what's a one-line Fibonacci formula. And please discuss it in the comment and ask any questions, and I'll read it. And tell me what you think about today's format, which is kind of short format, but nicely colored. And I didn't have my pens to write it since I kept making mistakes with writing the colors. So I pre-wrote the colors. Maybe someday I'll be able to do a black pen, red pen style pen switching, where I have like 5 colors in my hands. I just keep switching and I could write the whole thing. Anyways, have a wonderful day, and that's it.